So if you're a little bit older, you may be thinking, Ricardo Montalban, welcome to Fantasy Island. Or if you're a little bit younger, you're thinking, oh, it's an Usher lookalike. We're going to have a concert. No, I was a part of the Christmas story. And yet, a lot of folks forget me and my role in the Christmas story. If I had not been part of the story, it might have turned out very differently. Let me give you a hint. My job title in English, the word actually means messenger of God. And that is what I am, a messenger of God. I, of course, am Gabriel, the angel. And I've come to tell you my particular part in that story. Now, I would start by saying that what I experienced as it started would not be a part of the story you were familiar with. For me, the Christmas story started with a rumor. And the rumor was that the Father was sending the Son to earth. I couldn't quite believe this. I thought, why would the Father send the Son to earth? Now, you would have to understand what the Father and the Son are like. They're as close as you could possibly imagine. Their friendship, their harmony, their intimacy is beyond anything you might have ever experienced. Take the best marriage you're familiar with, or the best friend that you've ever had, or the best father-son or mother-daughter relationship, and amplify it 1,000, 1,000,000 times fold. This is the relationship between the Father and the Son. And the Father was going to send the Son to earth. Now, I've visited the earth many times. I've visited the high and mighty. I've visited the lowly and poor. And what could I say about earth? It's definitely not heaven. Let's put it that way. Heaven is wonderful. Heaven is pure light and pure warmth and pure love. And you all know, earth is not always. It has its challenges. It has its difficulties. It can be dark. It can be difficult. It can smell on occasion. And that the Father would send the Son to earth. Myself and the other angels, we were a little confused, but we have a phrase up in heaven. Our phrase is, well, the Father knows best. So we just figured we would trust the Father's plan. And so the Father sent me on my first message, and it was down to a young woman named Mary. Now, us angels, we not only can see the outside of someone, and Mary was a plain but very nice girl, but to see inside of her was to see such faith, such trust in God. I'm used to, when I visit anyone, to say to them, don't be afraid, because they usually are, and I said it out of force of habit, but I realized Mary wasn't afraid. She was curious. She had questions about carrying the Son. But her faith was so wonderful. She was so willing to trust God's plan. In fact, I saw in her that right away she started thinking about what a blessing this would be, how this would touch and change people's lives. If I would commend one thing to you about Mary, it was this willing to follow God's direction, God's call, to be used in whatever ways God would desire. It was wonderful to see in Mary. And then, a little bit later, I had another message to bring. And this was to Joseph. Poor Joseph. He was so heartbroken. I think that's why God told me to visit Joseph in a dream, so as not to upset him even more. For you see, Joseph thought that Mary had been unfaithful to him. He was a good man. He was just going to release her quietly. But I got to deliver the news to Joseph that this indeed was part of God's plan, that God was with him in the midst of this incredible, amazing story. If I would commend to you one thing about Joseph, it would be that trust in things that are difficult and hard to understand. Again, I look out at you and I know you have challenges. I know some of you are going through physical ailments and difficulties. I know some of you have relationship challenges and things are difficult in families and friendships and in marriages. I know that some of you have difficulties at work and other things going on in your lives, in your community. But like Joseph, know that God is with you. God is watching over. The Father knows best and will strengthen you and lead you through those difficult times. And then I had a little bit of time off. Well, there was one errand. Me and some angels, we had to go and crank up this one sun for the wise men, but that was pretty easy. And then finally, the son was born, the other son. And we knew we were going to get to go and tell people about the son. And I thought, God will send me to the high priest, or to the ruling council, the Sanhedrin, or to the king, or to the wealthy and wise and powerful. And yet the Father said, go visit those shepherds. It was a second time when I went, what are you thinking, Father? Why shepherds? Why would I go to visit those simple, plain folk? But then I realized that many times I have visited the wise and the wealthy and the powerful, and many times I have visited the simple and the ordinary, and the faith so often was in the plain folk, not in the rich and powerful folk. And so I went and I delivered. Now talk about being afraid. They were afraid, those simple shepherds. But I gave them the news that the son was born that night in Bethlehem. And then some friends came along and we sang a song of praise and celebration. We were jamming that night. And they went and they visited the son. Now, I will let you know that I did something the Father hadn't directed me to do, because I was curious. There were enough of them. It was dark. They weren't paying attention. I slipped in with the shepherds, and I went to see the son in those humble circumstances, lying there in a manger. And I knelt there with those shepherds. And then I understood why God would send the Son. Seeing Mary and Joseph there and the shepherds. Heaven, as I've said, is a wonderful place. But it separates God and humanity. And humanity doesn't often understand God. But they're looking at the child, looking at the son there in the manger. I knew the Father, through the Son, would connect, would communicate in a way never done before. And you probably know how that story unfolded, how the Son grew in years and in wisdom, how he spoke to people, and they finally came to understand the Father's plan, how he performed miracles, how he healed people and walked on water and turned water into wine so that they would know that he was indeed the Son. And you know the story, I'm sure, of how he would ultimately go to the cross so that there would be absolutely no doubt about the Father's love for humanity. And then be raised again from the dead so there would be no doubt that this was the Son. I knew kneeling there in front of the Son in that manger that this would finally communicate with no doubt whatsoever God's great love for all humanity. And I hope that Son stays with you, strengthens you, blesses you, touches your heart, not just this night, but for all time. Amen.